Set blasters on full.
What's up, guys? Gripe here with a review of the Revoltech Iron Man Mark 21 figure from Kaiyodo. So we'll start off by checking out the packaging. It's got a nice big window up front so you can view the figure and all the accessories. It is a little bit busy graphics-wise on the left there with the Iron Man picture, and it has a sci-fi Revoltech logo on the bottom right. We've got some information on the Revoltech joints on this side, and on the back here we have a bunch of different poses of the figure and a picture of all the accessories that come included. Unfortunately, everything's in Japanese. We've got another picture of Iron Man here with the Avengers logo and some Revoltech info, and the Revoltech logo up top, and some more information on the joints on the bottom. And here's everything fresh out of the box all laid out, and I'll go over those real quick for you. We have the clear plastic stand on the left. We've got two additional sets, open ones in the front and repulsor beams in the back. We've got a name tag for Iron Man Mark 21, two repulsor beams, and an accessory box. And we have the figure back here. Now I'll go over the accessories in a little bit more detail. Here's the name tag. It's just black plastic with Iron Man Mark 21, and it does have a peg hole which does not fit on the stand. And here are the two repulsor beams, and they are orange translucent plastic. You can see there's an air bubble in this one. They are sculpted fairly well, and there is some silver paint on the back here. And here's the small one. Similar sculpt, just a little bit smaller on the beam, and it does have the silver plastic on the end. And these are the open hands that come with the figure. You can see they're fairly well sculpted. There's really not much to the paint. It's just the gold paint that's used on the figure, and there is white on the repulsor part. And here's the repulsor beam firing hands, and these are just straight, flat, open hands, and it's just the gold paint on them, similar sculpt to the other ones. You can see the repulsor beams just go into those peg holes on the palms. And it also comes with a pair of fists. So now we'll check out the accessory box, and it's just orange translucent plastic. Just a nice addition to throw all the accessories in that you're not using. You can see it's got the revolver joint logo embossed on the bottom there. And now I'll take a quick look at the stand, and it is just clear plastic, has two peg holes, but only the back peg hole is small enough to fit in the figure. So now I'll check out the sculpt and paint on the figure, and it is fairly well sculpted. It's got some decent details, not as much as, say, a Figure Arts, but much better than a Marvel Legends. The paint job overall is pretty good. I like the colors they chose. I think they could have been applied a little bit better. They're a little rough, and I wish they used a glossier paint. They do have some nice accents like the silver parts here. I do like the eyes on here. I think they're painted well. You can see here the mask is a little bit flat, and I think the chin protrudes a little bit. There are some decent details sculpted on the back of the helmet here. I do like the back of the flaps here with that black and silver applied. I also like these black indentations on the upper thighs here, and you can see the silver is applied up at the top there on either side. I also like the details that are sculpted into the armpit here, and there is some silver paint applied to that as well. It looks pretty good. You can see some more ridges here on the forearms that are pretty nice. And it does have some nice treads sculpted into the bottom of the feet, and there are some nice details all over the figure. You can see some additional details sculpted in here on the elbow, on the top of the thigh here. That looks pretty good. And as you twist the leg, you can see additional details in there, and that is nice. And one of the big issues with the Revoltech figures are the joints. You can see they're fairly exposed, and they really don't make much effort to hide them. The joints are easy to replace, so that's a bonus. You can see they did sculpt in some details here in the inside of the elbow and put some silver paint on it. That looks pretty good. There are a lot of mold lines though on the upper torso and shoulder area, which is unfortunate. You can see they sculpted in a jet here under the flaps, but there's no different paint applied to it. And aside from the mold lines on the torso and shoulders, there's also some issues on the legs here. You can see some wrinkles here, or ripples in the plastic, and on this leg as well. Other than that, the paint is fairly nicely applied. Again, it is kind of rough, and I don't think it's as glossy as it should be, but I do like the colors. So now check out the articulation on the figure, and you can get him to look up pretty high, which is good for flying poses, and he looks down a decent amount, not that much. And you can't get any pivot on the head. You can get a little bit on neck, but it just goes right back. You can rotate it a bit, and these flaps on the back are articulated. They are hinged, so they go up about that high and close all the way down. And the shoulder pads are on tiny revolver joints, so you can hinge them out and rotate them around. And just like all the revolver joints, they do have a bit of a tendency to slip off the peg. And you can raise the arms a pretty good amount. You can see they go up about that high before the shoulder pads hit the head. And you can rotate the arms completely around the shoulder. And you can rotate them at the shoulder itself as well. Oh, just knock the shoulder pad off. You can see what I'm talking about. A lot of the pieces have a tendency to just pop off the peg, so you have to keep reseating it. And you can get rotation at the elbow as well. And you can bend the elbow just over 90 degrees. And it does extend completely straight. And you can rotate this forearm piece. It just kind of sits loosely on there. You just have to reseat it. And the back flap here, that is soft plastic, which helps with some articulation. And the wrists are small revolver joints, so you can rotate and hinge those in pretty much any direction. And one of the things I'm not too keen on is this abdomen area here. It's real springy and loose and just kind of hangs in there. I guess it helps with articulation, but it can look a little weird sometimes. And the diaphragm, you can get back about that far and forward that far, and it is a revolver joint. So you can get a little bit farther if you take the joint apart and pose it and then put it back. And you can't really get any side to side. You can see it just kind of springs back. You can get maybe a few degrees that will actually stay. You can rotate it all the way around if you want. And there's no articulation at the waist. So now we'll check out the hips. Get the legs apart about that far, which is actually pretty good. And you can get some rotation there. And you can see that piece stays still and the outer thigh rotates, which is actually a pretty nice feature. I like the way that looks. And due to the way the hips and waist are sculpted, you can't get too much forward and backward movement on the legs. You can see you can kick them forward maybe around 60 degrees. Backwards, you're getting 5 if you're lucky. And that's about all you can get. And he does have the double revolver joints in the knees, so you can get a pretty good bend on them. And although it feels like you can get them back a little bit farther, it just won't stay, so that's about the extent you're getting on the bend. And you can get rotation at the knee here, although you have to watch out it doesn't pop off the peg. And this front flap is articulated, and that is articulated with a small revolver joint. And the back one is articulated as well, and that's a swivel and hinge, so you can swivel it around a little bit in there. And both of those do help with articulation on the ankle. And you can see you can get the foot up about that high, and you can actually get it down quite a bit, which is nice. And you can get some rotation, although it does hit the side of the armor there near the ankles. And it does have ankle pivot. You're maybe somewhere around 30 degrees either way, so it's a decent amount for posing. And with some of these, you can get a little bit farther in the articulation, but it requires you taking the joint apart, posing the joint, and then putting the pieces back on. So now we'll check out the height and scale of the figure, and he stands at just under 6 inches tall. So he is a little bit on the small side, especially if you're trying to pose him with other 6-inch figures. To give you a better idea of that, here he is against the Marvel Legends Mark 43 on the left, the Figure Arts Mark 45 in the middle, and of course the Revoltech Mark 21 on the right. You can see he's just a bit smaller than all the other ones here. So overall, I have some mixed feelings about this figure. I think it looks really nice when it's finally posed and sitting on your shelf, but to get there can be a hassle with the revolver joints. They're ratchet joints and they don't really work well in between clicks. They're also really soft and squishy, so sometimes you have to disassemble the figure, tweak the joint just how you want it, and put everything back together, and it can be hit or miss. The only real issues I have with this sculpt are the mold lines and the wrinkles on the leg. And with the paint app, there's no real errors, but I think it could have been applied a bit smoother. It's a little bit textured, and I think they should have used a glossier paint. But we need to take into account where this figure falls in the marketplace, in between a Marvel Legends and a Figure Arts, both in price and quality. I think it's a fair deal and pretty good for that role. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the review, and subscribe for more. Thanks.
Set blasters on full.